Welcome back, folks. It's Kleppers' Corner Today in History, where we pull out the dusty Rolodex of time and discover that on this very date, humanity was either invading, inventing, or just flat out embarrassing itself in ways that would echo for centuries. September 27th is basically a historical sampler platter. You get conquest, you get religious rebranding, you get a car that changed America, and of course, you get late-night TV, the real glue holding Western civilization together. So buckle up, because we're about to go from William the Conqueror to Steve Allen with a few pit stops in Mexico, outer space, and yes, the Jesuits. Segment 1, 1066. William the Conqueror hits the high seas. On September 27th, 1066, William of Normandy finally said, "Fine, let's do this," and launched his fleet across the Channel to claim England. And really, it's nice when history is that clear-cut. Some people start revolutions, others invent democracy, and William, he just loaded up 1,000 boats, crossed the ocean, and said, "Dibs on England." Now, Harold Godwinson had just finished dealing with Harold Hardrada up north at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, because apparently England was the Coachella of Viking invasions that year. Harold won, but his army was so tired you could practically hear them groan when William's ships showed up. Imagine being Harold. You've just beaten Norway's toughest, and 2 days later, France's middle manager with a sword shows up demanding your desk chair. Of course, William wins at Hastings. Harold dies, William gets the crown, and the English language spends the next few centuries sounding like a really awkward mixtape. A little Germanic, a little French, a little what even is Anglo-Norman. Basically, if you've ever been confused by the spelling of knight or colonel, blame September 27th. Segment 2, 1540, the Jesuits get the Pope's seal of approval. Fast forward to 1540, when Pope Paul III officially chartered the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. The Jesuits were basically the Catholic Church's spiritual Navy SEALs, disciplined, mobile, and ready to deploy anywhere the Pope wanted. They even took a fourth vow, which wasn't celibacy, poverty, or silence. Nope, it was absolute obedience to the Pope about missions. The kind of vow that makes you wonder, did the Pope have a frequent flyer program? These guys were sharp. They weren't just praying in monasteries. They were running schools, writing textbooks, and debating Protestants into submission. If Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the door, the Jesuits were basically the guys showing up to say, "Cool, here's 96 counter-arguments and also a boarding pass to India." And their global footprint was massive. You can thank the Jesuits for spreading Catholicism, but also for running the elite schools that churned out future leaders. Basically, the Jesuits were the original SAT prep industry, except instead of a high score, you got eternal salvation. Segment 3, 1821, Mexico finally breaks free. By 1821, Mexico finally said, enough with Spain already. On September 27th, the Army of the Three Guarantees marched into Mexico City and basically declared independence was done. Now, was this independence born from the ideals of liberty and justice? Well, not exactly. The elites freaked out that Spain had gone liberal, so they joined up with the rebels to keep their privileges safe. It was less Viva la Revolución and more Viva our tax exemptions. Agustín de Iturbide went from fighting the rebels to leading them, which is like if Darth Vader suddenly said, actually, I'm joining the Ewoks, but only because the Emperor raised my rent. For a brief moment, Mexico had independence, unity, and even an emperor. Spoiler alert, that emperor was Iturbide himself, and it didn't end well. He was overthrown, exiled, and later executed. Mexico basically went from si se puede to, not so fast. Still, September 27th marks the birth of Mexico as a sovereign state, even if it was born screaming, fighting, and wrapped in contradictions, which, let's be honest, is how most nations are born. Segment 4, 1822. Champollion cracks the Rosetta Stone. In 1822, Jean-Francois Champollion walked into the Academy in Paris and dropped the biggest flex of all time. I can read hieroglyphs. After centuries of people staring at Egyptian walls and thinking it was just ancient emoji art, Champollion cracked the code thanks to the Rosetta Stone. The stone had 3 scripts: Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphs. Scholars were basically playing the nerdiest version of Rosetta Stone Duolingo, except failure meant you still had no idea what the pyramids were actually saying. Enter Champollion, who knew Coptic and realized hieroglyphs weren't just symbols of owls and eyes, they were actual sounds. Suddenly, Egypt's entire past opened up. And we realized those giant tombs weren't just pretty. They came with receipts, inventories, and even some petty curses. Of course, this whole breakthrough also came with a side of colonial baggage. The French found it, the British stole it, and now it sits in the British Museum like a really awkward hostage situation. But hey, at least we learned the ancient Egyptians were just as obsessed with bureaucracy as we are. Segment 5, 1908. The Model T rolls out. September 27, 1908. Henry Ford builds the first Model T, and America has never stopped honking since. Ford's big idea was that cars shouldn't just be toys for the rich. They should be affordable enough that even your uncle who still thinks email is witchcraft could buy one. And thanks to the assembly line, Ford cranked these babies out faster than Taco Bell can invent a new burrito. Prices dropped from $850 to $260, making the car the fidget spinner of its time. Everybody had to have one. Suburbs exploded, gas stations popped up, and suddenly distance wasn't a problem anymore. Unless you live near a freeway, in which case distance was replaced by noise, smog, and the eternal sound of someone revving their muffler at 2 a.m. But credit where it's due. The Model T gave America mobility. It turned Sunday drives into a pastime and traffic jams into a national sport. Ford basically invented both freedom and road rage in one stroke. Segment 6, 2007, NASA's Dawn mission blast off. In 2007, NASA launched the Dawn probe to check out Vesta and Ceres in the asteroid belt. This thing was the first spacecraft to use ion propulsion, which sounds like science fiction, but is really just Space Prius. Instead of burning tons of fuel, it gently puffed ions like a cosmic vape pen until it got where it needed to go. And it worked. Dawn orbited Vesta, then casually left, cruised over to Ceres, and orbited that too, something no other spacecraft had ever done. Scientists found out Ceres has briny water under the surface, making it a potential ocean world. Translation: aliens might be chilling under a giant space ice cube waiting for us to knock. The real lesson? Even in space, road trips are better when you don't just drive by. You stop, stay a while, and check out the local scenery. Segment 7, 1940. Axis of Trouble, the Tripartite Pact. On September 27, 1940, Germany, Italy, and Japan signed the Tripartite Pact, officially creating the Axis powers. On paper, it looked like the Avengers of fascism. In reality, it was more like three divas who refused to share a dressing room. The deal was simple. If the U.S. joined the war, the Axis would back each other up. Spoiler alert, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, America jumped in, and Germany and Italy were like, guess we have to now. The problem was, none of them actually coordinated. Germany invaded the Soviet Union while Japan signed a peace deal with them. It was less axis of unity and more axis of who's on first. The pact globalized World War II, but it also showed that alliances built on ego and geography don't last long. Think of it like a bad group project. Everybody signed the contract, nobody read it, and then they all blamed each other when the grade came back as defeat. Segment 8, 1954, The Tonight Show begins. Finally, September 27, 1954, Steve Allen premiered The Tonight Show, inventing late-night TV as we know it. Before that, late-night television was basically static, test patterns, or some guy selling mattresses. Allen changed all that with monologues, celebrity interviews, and comedy sketches. Basically, he invented the blueprint for every late-night host to this day. A little charm, a little self-deprecation, and a lot of pretending to laugh at celebrities' bad anecdotes. Late-night TV became America's bedtime ritual. For some people, it was scripture. Johnny Carson was their high priest, David Letterman their sarcastic prophet, and Jimmy Fallon their youth pastor who tries too hard. But Steve Allen started it all on this day, proving that sometimes history isn't about conquest or invention, it's about staying up too late and laughing with strangers. Segment 9, Births and Deaths, Samuel Adams and Edgar Degas. On this date, Samuel Adams was born in 1722 and Edgar Degas died in 1917. Samuel Adams was basically the hype man of the American Revolution, organizing committees of correspondence, stirring up resistance, and yes, eventually lending his name to a beer brand. Because what says liberty like a lager? Meanwhile, Degas was busy painting dancers, racehorses, and Parisian laundresses with such grace that he accidentally invented Impressionism, even though he hated the word. Adams gave us independence, Degas gave us art. One gave us liberty, the other gave us ballerinas, and both gave us reasons to drink. Samuel with beer, Degas with the crushing realization that you'll never be able to paint like that. So there you have it, September 27th, the date that gave us conquest, revolutions, art, cars, comedy, and a global war alliance that fizzled faster than a boy band reunion. It's a reminder that history isn't just dates and names. It's people making messy choices, chasing power, inventing stuff, or just trying to keep you awake past 11:30. September 27th is basically Histramine. Norman invasions, Jesuit missions, Mexican independence, space probes, Model Ts, and late-night TV. The through line, humanity's endless urge to conquer, decode, invent, or at the very least, stay up way too late laughing at Steve Allen.